In a normal business,
Yeah.
you can make adjustments. Customers aren't coming in. You start making adjustments, tweak the marketing here, tweak it there, from guerrilla marketing to Facebook ads to radio to whatever it is. You start making adjustments to increase the revenue, the customers coming in the door, increasing your training inside the four walls. In the tax business, in a seasonal business like that, where you have most of your revenue coming in within a few weeks of the year, if you don't get it right, you have a day or two or three to make adjustments, and they have to be massive adjustments.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Eric Von Horn.
Jeff, I got you fired up just before
Happy New
I
Year,
hit
man.
record. I said, we were like, what are we going to talk about today? We have a list of things that we could talk about. And I said, well, what about if we talk about like our first year as a franchisee? And you're like, dude, you don't understand. I was in the trenches working all the time. I'm like,
Oh
I know.
God.
So was I. I'm the guy that loves lifestyle. I'm the guy that talks about building out teams and not doing everything in the business. But man, that first year in business, and even beyond that, like I was in the trenches. I was working hard. And so
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun to kind of go back to, 20 years ago when you and I first got into the tax business. We both started out in the tax business. We were competitors in different markets. We didn't know each other back then, but we were absolutely competitors. What was that first year like for you? What are some of the things that you remember about it?
Wow, man. Yeah. So I was just trying to I was 30 years old when I got into franchising. I'm 52 now. It's 22 years. It's my 23rd year basically in franchising right now. But I remember I had a couple of friends. We all had sales jobs out of college. And I had a couple of friends that were had purchased the same franchise, same income tax franchise, a year before me, and they had some success. Now they were able to go locally, which was nice. I live in Cincinnati, so they were actually able to open up in Cincinnati, and so it's kind of nice having like in their backyard. But they had some moderate success in the first year. All along of like tax business is like about as seasonal as it gets. People think it's a 4-month business. It's really compacted into January and maybe the first half of February. 90% of your revenue is coming in six weeks a year. Boy, do you have to be prepared for that. But they were able to open up like in Cincinnati, like locally. And they had some success. They kept their sales jobs. It was kind of like a side hustle seasonal business where it was low investment, but you could make a decent amount of money for really grinding it out a few months a year, or at least what felt like it was a few months a year. And so when I kind of checked in with them, like, hey, how'd it go? And I found out that they had some moderate success. I was kind of interested in doing it. But the problem was there was nothing available in Cincinnati. So the closest metropolitan area to Cincinnati that had any territory available was Lexington, Kentucky, which is about an hour and 15 minutes. And so I partnered up with a couple other dudes, and we, based on like very little data that we had at the time, we just said, hey, let's take on all of Lexington. Now, Lexington is a smaller town. It's probably a third, maybe even a fourth of the size of greater Cincinnati. But it was, I don't know, there probably was 5 or 6 territories. And so that was kind of the beginning. And the franchisor, he had built a very successful tax business himself. He had sold that to a national brand that everybody knows. He then had a non-compete in the Cincinnati area. Originally, he had 30 locations in Cincinnati in the 90s. He had sold that to a national player. He had a non-compete in the greater Cincinnati area. He then started up in Dayton and started franchising, and he couldn't go into Cincinnati. So when my friends got in, it was the first time that he could come back to Cincinnati. So by the time that I had gotten into the business, there was less than 100 locations. And most of the franchisees were friends and family of his that had seen his growth and his previous success in building a tax business and selling the tax business. But he had zero franchising experience. This guy had zero franchising experience. And he hired, I think all of his original leadership team literally came from Liberty, where you were at Liberty. I think the initial franchise, the calls that you would go through and how you learn about the business and the prospectus, the whole leadership team was from Liberty. This guy had a way of operating the business, but he was not a franchisor before. So where I'm going with that is when we kind of decided to jump into this thing and we were excited, you're so excited. You just want to get open. You have the vision that you're just going to knock it out of the park. That's how I felt. I'm like, all we have to do is build it.
Every franchisee's like that.
Yeah, I'm just like, all we got to do is get these doors open, baby, and it is easy. It's going to be great. And they had the process of how to actually deliver the service down pretty good. And they had that piece, the actual part of running and operating the actual service within the four walls, that piece they understood. They also, to some extent, they had some pretty decent media knowledge, right? How to create a good ad, where to place the ad. And there was no Facebook and stuff back. It was all radio and TV, but mostly radio is where we kind of spent the money. But from a him understanding franchising, the training and education piece around what it is to be a franchisee, the roles and responsibilities of what we're doing. There wasn't a lot of guidance there. There was decent media placement. They had a couple of manuals on this or that, but it was it was a lot of stuff that we had to figure out on our own.
So let me set the stage for at that same point in time with my background, because I was with a different company that had at that time, hundreds of locations around the country. I started out in Kansas City as my first location, home of the big guy, H&R Block. So we were really the first ones to go in there, and we opened up, I think, 20 different locations. Not just me, but there was a group of franchisees that went in there to open up one year. So we all of a sudden went in and we had a pretty large presence because we were not really focused on any of the we had some radio ads and some of those things, but we were really focused on guerrilla marketing. And I would say we were pretty buttoned up in a lot of ways. Looking back, I thought, let me back up. Seasonal business. So that's kind of setting the stage of the different sizes of the company. Liberty, much more mature, still early on though. That's where I was going. We were still early on. There were still a lot of things that weren't built out yet. We didn't have, and I've talked about it before, a very defined process within the four walls of closing the sale, having that customer journey when they come in, what you do, how you do it. It's very specific. That came a few years later. So there was, many hundreds of franchisees by the time that came in. We didn't have the top 10 things that we should be focusing on as franchisees. That wasn't there early on. That came after, about 400 locations open up. So early on, even though we were much more mature than your brand, we still didn't have a lot of things that came along in my journey with Liberty. I want to hit on the seasonality of it because I think that's pretty important. So the seasonality is a blessing and a curse. You have to get it right. In a normal business, you can make adjustments. Customers aren't coming in. You start making adjustments, tweak the marketing here, tweak it there, from guerrilla marketing to Facebook ads to radio to whatever it is. You start making adjustments to increase the revenue, the customers coming in the door, increasing your training inside the four walls. In the tax business, in a seasonal business like that, where you have most of your revenue coming in within a few weeks of the year, if you don't get it right, you have a day or two or three to make adjustments, and they have to be massive adjustments. And I remember early on, uh, some of the adjustments I had to make, I thought I was doing a lot because I was working hard. I was exhausted from getting all these tax preparers trained up and hiring the manager, opening up the location, getting that certificate of occupancy at the last minute, all the training, all the material that you're ordering, all this money's going out, and I had to get it right. And we were out delivering donuts and, doing all the guerrilla marketing with the people outside waving. I was not happy with the results. And I shouldn't have been happy with the results. They were still weak, and I was working hard. And there's a lot of other people in the business that were not getting the results that they wanted. I could care less about them. I was looking at the people that were getting outsized results. They were getting 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 times the amount of customers in the door than I was getting. So I'm like, okay, there's all these other people that are getting the same results as me. And there are other people in different markets, in different parts of the country that were getting much better results. And they were getting highlighted on these calls that we were doing. And I'm like, well, if they can do that in these other markets, I can do it here. What am I not doing? And I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't doing enough of the right things that were driving results in the door. And so right there, I started to 2x and 3x and 4x the amount of marketing that I was doing. And that became really my main focus, because it didn't matter if I was in the store trying to take care of customers or manage employees. If customers weren't getting in the door, none of that mattered. And so I just went full on to be out of the location, to be outside of those four walls, trust my managers, and drive customers in the door. That meant early mornings and late nights, doing whatever it took. But I just remember so clearly, like, I needed to do something different. And looking back, if there was one person out of hundreds of franchisees that was getting results that I wasn't getting, that's the person I was talking to. Like, I was talking to the 1 or 2 or 3 people that were getting results that nobody else was getting. And I'm like, how are you doing it? What should I be doing? And I had all the excuses. I'm like, well, they're in a better market. They're different here. And I had all the reasons, but like, what are they doing differently than I was doing? And it was the amount of marketing. And that was that's something that I've never forgotten. And it was not easy marketing back then. It was hard. It was hard work.
It was, yeah. I mean, just to touch on like the seasonality piece, like there's lots of industries that have seasonality. Like, we've been talking to some like asphalt companies, and that's not a year-round business in the Northeast, in where it gets cold. It's not. You just have to kind of shut it down. But you still, seasonality in that business means like 6, 8, 9 months. Like, think of like other seasonal businesses, like landscaping, right? Like landscaping, same thing, seasonal business, but like 6, 8, 9, 10 months a year, right? In the tax business, it's a seasonal business where the tax season, you can't file a tax return without a W-2, right? And W-2s come out in like, whatever, the second or third week of January. And then you got to file your taxes by like April 15th without an extension, right? Not to try to get super technical, but just there, all of a sudden, that level of seasonality, if revenue was equal, right? Over each day, you're talking about a 90-day period of seasonality. Whereas other businesses that are seasonal are more than 90 days, right? 120 days, 6 months, 9 months, right? But the real crux of it is that way more than half of your revenue comes in a 6-week period of time, right? Of the 90 days, 6 weeks of that, a little bit less than half of the 90-day period is where 80, 90% of the revenue comes in. So every day is so critical, right? you had, if it was your store, it was your first year being open, and every subsequent year thereafter, you had to be open on January 2nd. The difference between January 2nd and January 3rd could be monster difference. So the stress of just getting it open. So where I'm going with that is like, as I moved from franchisee into area developer, and myself and the same and a couple of business partners were area developers in 6 states, and the three of us opened collectively over 1,000 locations with our franchisees in 3.5 years. Over a thousand locations. It was about 360 franchisees, over 1,000 locations in 3.5 years. But what we learned when we were franchisees was the time management piece around making sure that the locations are open, but not just open. Like, the whole thing, once again, is like, you've got such a short window of driving traffic through the store per year that it wasn't just enough to start like running radio ads a couple of days before January 2nd. You guys did different grassroots stuff than we did. First of all, going into a market where we had purchased the entire market, made a pretty significant investment. I think it was 5 or 6 territories. We knew that we didn't have enough time, and we didn't know enough about the industry to like open all 6 territories up, all 6 like physical locations in year one. I don't even know if we had the capital to do that. But just the fear of, because it's not just opening the store, it's full boat marketing on 6 locations. All the staffing, the manager, like the whole 9 yards, it would have been too much for us to tackle. So in the first year, what we did was we opened 2 flagships, strategic locations, to kind of cover, each half of like the greater Lexington area. But then what we did is we opened up these pop-up kiosk locations. We opened up like 30 of those, kind of filling in the rest. And what we did was, these were in like any place that had traffic, like grocery stores or, anything, just any type of consumer-oriented business where we could go in and take a little bit of space and just be able to engage with people that were already in these stores. Now, during the tax season, we also would set up a little kiosk, but we always told people, hey, we got our flagships, but we can start the process here. We can actually do the process here, but we also want to let you know you can go to our flagships. And that strategy was huge, but just setting up those like 30 kiosk locations in addition to like the 2 flagships, that was immense work. And we like literally started full boat marketing, and we were in these kiosks like basically before Thanksgiving. And January 1st is like January 2nd is like the first time that you can actually start having some customers come in and doing some pre-return work. But moving into like area development and designing this, like, hey, what are you going to work on? What are you going to work on, and what are you not going to work on? Right. And making sure that they're focused on time that they're spending is focusing on moving the needle in the business. Right. I've worked with countless brands over the years that are brick and mortar brands. And so often I think that franchisees think their job is, before they open, to like manage the general contractor that's building it out. Right. Like, that's going to move the needle in the business. Like, you hire the general contractor to do the work, let them do the work. Right. But like, I see a lot of people like hiring like a PR agency, but not really like getting out of it what they wanted to get out of it. And it's just spending all of this money on stuff that's like, it's just not going to replace like being in the trenches, the business development work that you can do to build referral relationships. That was our whole thing. And in Lexington that year, we did 2,000 tax returns, which is like unheard of for a first-year operator. At least it was in our system. Maybe not in your system, but for our system, that was like unheard of. But it was because of more than half of those, way more than half of those came from the grassroots efforts, the referral partners, the pop-up kiosk, being in there every single day. And we had to staff all those every single day. And then we were driving around location to location to, like, me and my two business partners, we had the 30 kiosks. We each had 10. We had to manage those 10 each. We had to staff them though, but we had to go to all 10 every single day and just get the word out and just talk to people. And so we staffed them, but then I would have my route, and I would start early in the morning and go for 8-9 hours just from kiosk to kiosk, just to promote. And it worked. And I would say that in the 2,000 tax returns we did in that first year, maybe 30% of those came from radio ads, just buying the ads and waiting for people to show up. But 70% of that business was driven by that hub and spoke type model that we came up with. And just being in the belly of the beast. But it was the time management piece. And that actually going through that process ourselves really helped us to be great area developers and really get the franchisees focused on what can you do to move the needle, especially in that first year, and hitting those milestone dates, not just the date that you have to be open by, but like just building the database, being in those kiosks, like for 6, 7, 8 weeks before we opened. We were just trying to build the database so that we could communicate with people. That's it.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are 2 really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisee and you want to be around a community of successful Z's and other brands and in other industries, this is why I created the Franchisee Mastermind. If you want access to the best single and multi-unit owners to know what they're doing, or if you want to be around other multi-brand owners, then you'll want to check out my Franchisee Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections, to each other. They want a shortcut success, both short-term and long-term. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com.
So many same principles apply today in different brands, different businesses. Do you have any war stories? Like, I remember we were similar. We did not go as heavy into those, like the hub and spoke model. Remember being in a grocery store. Remember being in a Kmart. I had a kiosk in a Kmart.
Yes.
And Walmart.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and check cashers. We had some kiosks and check cashers, and it wasn't to do tax returns. It was like the purpose was to be in front of your ideal customer, be able to start it for them, which is sticky, and you start it for them, and then they can come in, or you can finish it for them, whatever it is. But it's about getting in front of that customer, having that sticky service. So they come in to your main location. And I think a lot of franchisees, I remember them saying it didn't work. This doesn't work. Why am I going to be in an Ace check casher? Why am I going to be over at this check casher? I'm not doing many returns there.
And
They didn't understand. Like, we would have to, I remember, John, the founder, would always be like having to drive it into franchisees' heads, the reason why. And the reason why we would give out free tax returns, the reason why we would discount at certain points, the reason why you don't discount when you're at peak capacity, the reasons why you need to overstaff when the customers are coming in, and why you need to let people go home when the customers aren't there. And that whole seasonality of staffing is another way that people would make or lose money in the business. You had to be the right staff at the right times, and you had to, send people home or have people on call. And I think that I look back at people that were in the tax business with me. Some of them are the most successful people in franchising as entrepreneurship in general, because they had to learn those lessons or they didn't make it. If you don't learn those lessons, you don't make it. I think it's too easy in other businesses for people just to slowly bleed money or slowly continue to make wrong decisions, because in the tax business, it showed up, like those that were listening and doing what they're supposed to do and those that weren't. Going back to war stories, I remember being in some of these neighborhoods, building relationships, like you said, with local businesses, or actually being in some of these check cashers, and they're all bulletproof glass and all kinds of neighborhoods that are used to that. And I remember a friend, Johnny, who had a bunch of cell phone pager businesses back in the day. He's like, Eric, you're in a rough neighborhood. Like, I've been shot at there before. Like, I've seen murders over here. I
Oh
remember,
boy.
because he would go in and he had businesses where he had to take, he wouldn't take armored cars because that was too dangerous going in with armored like vehicles. He's like, I go in at different times to go get my cash out. And he's like, I've been robbed. You got to be careful. I remember going into this,
My God.
we were like in East Austin. And I remember going into this Mexican restaurant, and it was a bar, and it was 10 o'clock in the morning. I go in there dressed as Uncle Sam, just barge in there like I own the place. And I swear it was
The
like there
music
was just a
stopped.
handful of gang members there, and they I go in and I'm like, what am I doing in here? And am I going to be able to get out? They looked at me like I was the biggest idiot walking in there. They'd been drinking for a while. It was 10 o'clock, so they'd already been drinking, and I don't think it was really a place that the public would go into. But like there was not a place that I would not go into to try to get customers. That was my mentality. I'm going everywhere to get customers in the business. But I remember that place over in East Austin, and it was pretty scary back then. Any like I have others too. Like, I mean, I have a lot of other war stories that I'm glad I never have to go back and do some of those things. What about you, though? I'm sure you've seen a
I
thing or two.
mean, yeah. Oh, I've seen some stuff. I mean, I'll tell you, the toughest days in that industry is when you process a tax return, um, based on when you process the tax return, the IRS would give you the date of the refund, right? They'd give the date of when the refund would be released. And it was pretty accurate. It was pretty accurate. Uh like very accurate. But every once in a while, during the tax season, during the heaviest part of the tax season, the IRS would come out and delay everything for like a week. Remember? Holy cow. When you've got hundreds of people coming in that day to get their refund, because I think it was like always on a Friday that it would release. Is that, it might, I don't, some of it I've kind of like tuned out. It's not like it wasn't like there was a daily drop. It was like the first day that the refunds would be processed was always like the third week of January or something. But oh man, the IRS would move that date back. And I remember one year that they moved it back like a week, and that was pandemonium. That was really, really difficult. But like from like a trauma, not trauma, but just like, oh, like the war stories of like, the kiosk thing was huge for us. Just getting in businesses where we could talk to potential customers, and they became referral partners for us. It was kind of like a revenue share that we had with these kiosks, the people that own these businesses. And even though we were in 30, it's not like we knocked on 30 doors and got into 30 kiosks. Man, we literally went down there starting in the early fall, like right after Labor Day, every single day. We probably went into 300 businesses to talk to them to get to the 300, to get to the 30. And we just, as we started going in, we went into this like auto dealership. And this guy that was in the auto dealership that owned the auto dealership was like, yeah, I'd love to partner with you guys. And he was moving a lot of cars. And but he also kind of started opening up doors with other auto dealers and other people that he knew in Lexington. And, we said, hey, like if you can even help us open other doors, like not only will we do a little rev share with you on your business, but any other doors that you open, we'll do a little rev share on anything that we get out of those as well. And I mean, I'll tell you, when we decided to do Lexington, once again, we just thought that it was a business in a box. You run some ads, you make money. I mean, it's just it's the old like perception versus the reality. And very quickly, once we got into the system and realized like, the work that we had to do to generate, the return that we wanted, it was a serious grind. But we were down there, man, and we without those kiosks, I don't think we would have done more than maybe a couple hundred returns in each of the flagships. But the flagships both did like over 500 a piece, and then the other 1,000 we got from the 30 kiosks. But it just all worked. But it was that grind. And then the following year, like you have to reestablish all of those relationships. You kind of prune the tree, get rid of some, you get some other ones. But now, in addition to just being the franchisee, now we're launching over 100 new franchisees and over 3 to 350 locations through our area development piece in 6 different states. I mean, at one point we had apartments in like 8 or 9 cities. I mean, I would literally just buy a one-way plane ticket and tell my wife I don't know when I'm coming home. Just trying to get all these locations open and train their staff. And I mean, it was heavy duty.
Yeah, I remember. Well, you and I took that similar path. I got into area development that second tax season as well. I went into Austin, Texas, and I sold them in Kansas City and bought the area development in Austin, and then started opening up my own in Austin. That's where I started to buy out some underperformers. And really that's like, I mean, being an area developer, which is like a master franchisee now, um, it's it's a lot of work. Like it gives you a taste for being a franchisor and managing franchisees, helping franchisees. You've seen the good and the bad and the ugly with franchisees. And I talk about it all the time. Like, franchisees need to understand understand the franchisor. Franchisors need to understand the franchisee. But as an area developer, I think that puts you in the best position because you are a franchisee. You are still in an agreement as kind of I don't know, partner is not the right term, but you are like a partner with that franchisor still. You are not the franchisor. So but then you are managing franchisees. So franchisees see you as a franchisor. The franchisor sees you as a franchisee. You're an area developer kind of stuck in the middle. So you start to understand both sides. You understand why the franchisor's doing the things that they're doing. You understand why the franchisees are frustrated with the things that they're frustrated with. And you get to see the best of both worlds. But I didn't realize how much that would prepare me for what I'd eventually do in franchising. But I think that is probably the best place to understand the franchisor relationship is as that master franchisee or that area developer. Is that, as you look back, is that, what'd you learn as an area developer? Is that kind of the same for you as well?
Absolutely, man. I mean, it was it was funny because when we became franchisees, like there wasn't a lot of great training on what it's like to be a franchisee, like our roles and responsibilities. I mean, we literally just kind of had to figure a lot of stuff out. The franchisor, they provided the software that you had to have. They provided the banking relationships that you had to have to process the tax returns. And they provided some help around like the media buying. Like Other than that, we had to figure everything else out on our own. And it's funny, as I moved from being a franchisee to being an area developer, I fell right back into the same trap, thinking that the franchisor had it all had area development all figured out, right? Like, is that what's
that's a
that saying? It's
podcast.
like, yeah, it's like the first time it's like shame on you. The second time, shame on me. Like the idea that I thought like, okay, because the franchising people, people wanted to be franchisees. This guy had less than zero figured out on the area development thing. And so talk about having to do everything on that side. But same thing, man. I look back as to like why we were successful as area developers. And it was there was no clock. It was just, we're just going to grind, man. We're going to grind and we're going to focus our energy on what moves the needle. What moves the needle? I mean, I can remember like, part of being an area developer is you have to be able to you have to build out your areas. Meaning you have
Stop
to
right
find
there.
great
I want to give the
franchisees.
audience like real Jeff and Eric partner level dynamics. Jeff, we have a call with a possible brand in 30 seconds. Do we want to cancel that or do we want to stop the podcast? This is you and I are always doing this. We're always going from call to call.
I think we got to jump on that call.
So we're gonna save the area development.
But I wouldn't mind. I don't know. Maybe later on this week we do a part 2 where we kind of dive back in because you brought me back to like ground zero, and there's probably a lot more of the story to be told.
I think so. And it's
good.
all, I mean, the early days as a franchisee, and it's good to relive some of this. And it's the same thing that we see franchisees dealing with today. Like nothing's changed. It's business ownership. It's entrepreneurship 101. And we've lived it. Obviously we've gone on to do other things and manage in a different way, but that came with time and experience.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.